Taurus, welcome to your eclipse reading for the lunar eclipse in Gemini, which happens on the 30th of November this year. So this is our final lunar eclipse for 2020, and in many ways it's kind of bookending the eclipse that we had in June, that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius that happened in kind of early June. So if you haven't already, do check out the general forecast that I did, because I kind of talk about the overall trends, the Sabian symbol, all of that kind of thing, which will give you a flavor of the nature of the eclipse. In this reading, we're going to go and dive deeper. We're going to look at some of the prominent planets that are going to be active at this eclipse and in the 2 weeks that follow. We're going to see where they fall in your chart. Do bear in mind that I'm reading as if Taurus was rising, so if Taurus is not your ascendant, I recommend that you go and watch the reading for your correct rising sign, and then the houses will be correct for you. So yeah, Taurus, quite a lot going on. As usual, a lunar eclipse is about culminations and endings, so it's what we're being asked to release, or it can be what's finally coming to fruition, perhaps after 6 months, as I say, back things that started back in June. But overall, this particular lunar eclipse happens in your 2nd and your 8th houses. So these are the houses of resources, finances, self-worth, and how we kind of value ourselves. So the full moon will be in the sign of Gemini, and for you, Taurus, that is 2nd house of earned income, material possessions, as well as self-worth, your skills and abilities, and your currency, essentially. And then the sun in Sagittarius will be in your 8th house, which is the house of shared resources, joint ventures, and it's kind of the house of the things that we can hide from ourselves, the sort of subconscious stuff, in the sense of shadow stuff. It's the natural house of Scorpio, and so in many ways it's talking about where we can kind of sort of come into contact with others, or conspire with others, sometimes in a negative way. So if you think about it, it can be about sex, it can be about intimacy, about trust, on a kind of immaterial level. On a material level, it's about things like taxes, it's about divorce settlements, splitting up the assets, and it can also be about where we find ourselves dealing with other people's finances or assets in some way, or where we can be called upon to clean up emotional messes that are usually the result of 2 parties, not just one. So yeah, lots that's kind of interesting, and that could be stirred up now. And it's worth saying that Venus, your ruler, will be kind of moving from quite a grumpy phase during November, where she made a lot of very difficult, challenging aspects to the outer planets when she was in Libra, to a much happier place, particularly once she ingresses into Scorpio on the 21st of November, so about a week before this eclipse. So Venus will be in Scorpio, and she'll be making some really nice positive aspects to Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter in the kind of weeks that follow this lunar eclipse. So things are definitely going to be on the up as far as that's concerned. So Venus currently will be in Scorpio, so she'll be sitting here in your 7th house of committed partnerships and contracts, so one-to-one relationships, like business contracts that are sort of ongoing. And hopefully she will be bringing you some good luck when it comes to that sort of sphere of life, because she certainly wasn't very auspicious when she was in your 6th house of work and health. So that's the first thing to say. Now, at this lunar eclipse, we're going to have a couple of interesting aspects. The first being a sextile between Mercury and Saturn. So, of course, Mercury rules Gemini, so that in and of itself makes Mercury quite prominent. And Mercury is, of course, the messenger of the gods. So, if there are any kind of signs and omens that are going to come through at this lunar eclipse and the 2 weeks that follow, it's going to be via Mercury. So Mercury is currently in Scorpio as well, which means that Scorpio will be in your 7th house here of contracts as well as long-term one-to-one relationships. And Saturn will be in Capricorn, which is your 9th house. So this is the house of learning, teaching, foreign relationships, or sort of connections, as well as publishing, higher education, and any form of philosophical belief. Sometimes it can also be about legal matters, in mundane astrology. It can sometimes be about court cases and that kind of thing. And given that we've got this emphasis on the 8th house, it could be about, legal matters where you've either sued an employer or somebody about a financial contract, you're trying to get compensation, or it can be about, say a divorce settlement of some kind. So with Mercury sextiling Saturn, this is a very positive aspect. We'll have a look at how this is likely to manifest for you when we get into the geoscope, and of course we will clarify with trinkets from the Magpie Oracle. But in and of itself, that combination is very good for serious discussions, constructive talks, important announcements or decisions, particularly when it comes to one-to-one relationships and business contracts. But overall, I think you can kind of rely on yourself to make good decisions now in those two areas. And then Chiron will also be making some really positive aspects to the luminaries at this full moon lunar eclipse, which always gives us opportunities for healing. And in your case, Taurus, this will fall in your 8th house. Now, I mean your 12th house. So Chiron currently retrograde in Aries, and with that, don't be surprised if on some level you feel a little bit kind of alienated or somehow cut off from other people. If you think about the 12th house as being a retreat from the world, or from kind of socializing with others, it's very much about you can physically be going into retreat, so going to some mountaintop chalet and really sort of doing some deep meditation work. It can also be about just retreating within your own psyche, perhaps because you feel a little bit hurt or wounded, or you just need time away to think. So Chiron now making positive aspects to the sun and the moon, and with that I think comes the potential for healing, particularly when it comes to your financial relationships with others. So that's very, very positive. It can also be about your outlook on money and and self-worth, what you think that you have to offer others. So that's very, very positive. So the only real challenge that's likely to crop up for you at this lunar eclipse is Neptune. Now Neptune is currently it's in Pisces, and it will be turning retrograde on the 29th of November, so literally a couple of days before this lunar eclipse. So Pisces for you is 6th house, from what I know. It's not, it is 11th house, so 11th house of friendships and group situations. So Neptune will be making a T-square to the nodes, which are also in Gemini and Sagittarius, and this is similar, it's mirroring the aspect it made back in June at that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, where it teamed up with Mars, which at that point was still in Pisces, and caused a bit of aggravation, misunderstandings, confusion, that kind of thing, particularly in relation to group situations of all kinds. So this could be friendships, it could be social media, it could be professional associations that you belong to, anything that's kind of group orientated. So that's likely to kind of flare up again, but this time, as I say, Neptune will be direct, so I kind of feel like there's an opportunity to now resolve confusion, to get clarity when it comes to particularly financial matters. So I'm thinking here about like trade unions, or any kind of group situation where you've kind of teamed up with others in order to make it clear what you're worth or what you feel you should be paid. So some kind of collective there. But anyway, let's get into your reading and see what wants to come through, in terms of the geomancy. Okay, so let's start first of all with the moon and the sun. Interesting. So it looks to me as though this particular lunar eclipse is going to allow you to resolve some kind of matter that has to do with finances. Rubeus, as the clarifier for the full moon, kind of tells me that you're quite angry. You're kind of full of resentment. You may feel as though you've lost out on some kind of business deal or pay, so maybe you were let go of at work and you didn't feel as though you got full compensation, but definitely you've been brooding when it comes to money and finances, and you do feel as though, particularly when it comes to some kind of joint project or venture, or like a loan or an inheritance, or a divorce settlement, that you've lost out, because Karse here is clarifying the sun in Sagittarius in your 8th house, and Karse very often is about loss or limitation, or just feeling cut out of a deal, for example. So that's what I think you are kind of working with and potentially processing and then letting go of at this particular lunar eclipse. And of course, this will last for 2 weeks, because then we move into a brand new cycle on that 14th of December solar eclipse. So not too long to have to kind of contend with these matters. But let's just see what's happening for you in your 7th house. Yes. Okay, so clarifying Venus for me here. A missio in your 7th house. So I do feel as though whatever you're kind of annoyed about potentially has to do with either a business contract or a divorce settlement. A missio here in your 7th house very often is about feeling that you've lost out on something. So it could be some kind of business deal, or it could be a breakup. So some kind of breakup of a long-term relationship, such as a marriage. So I do feel like this is either about a divorce settlement or potentially a dispute of some kind about a contract. Okay, let's see what's happening with Neptune. Nice. So as I was saying, with Neptune going direct, Fortuna Minor clarifying Neptune. This is air energy. It's about a fortunate change in circumstances. So yes, I do feel as though if we say, for example, you were in dispute with one other party about a contract or a marriage, maybe you didn't feel as though friends were that supportive necessarily, and that's going to change now with Fortuna Minor. This is very often, as I say, about a fortunate change in circumstances, about a kind of uptick in the sort of cosmic weather, or the sort of the overall support that's available to you within the context of friendships and group situations. So that's good news. All right, let's see what's happening with Chiron. Yeah. So Chiron here echoing Cancer in your 8th house. So you have kind of retreated a bit, and I do feel it has something to do with a disappointment or a loss, to do with kind of joint resources. So Chiron here, I think, definitely offering you an opportunity for healing. So there's definitely something you can learn from the situation. Maybe you'll never repeat it again. You'll never allow yourself to be that sort of vulnerable or trusting. It could also be that you just have learned, you've kind of grown up in terms of learning how to negotiate better within the context of contracts and that kind of thing when it comes to money. So in that sense, Cancer can be about mastery, and I think with positive aspects between Chiron and the Sun and the Moon, there's definitely an opportunity here to sort of turn pain into power, and to kind of definitely level up from your experience, even if it was quite a difficult one. All right, let's see about that Mercury-Saturn sextile. Interesting. So I'm just going to pull a card for Mercury, actually. Nice. So really interesting energy here. Mercury and Saturn making a sextile between the 7th and the 9th house. So I do feel as though you've learned important lessons, as I said, when it comes to your agreements with others, particularly financial agreements. Albus here for me is about a blank slate, so I do feel as though from either a legal point of view or from a kind of a higher outlook, you feel as though you're drawing a line under something and you're pressing the reset button, here, either legally or from a sort of belief perspective, but you're kind of rewriting your beliefs, when it comes to partnerships. And then Acquisitive for Mercury is very, very positive. It's all about gain, and this is usually financial gain. So swings and roundabouts, I feel, with you. Whilst you might have lost out in the past, I feel as though because you've learned your lesson, you will now be all the richer. You're definitely going to play it very differently, I think, when it comes to agreements and contracts going forward. So I think that's very, very positive, actually. Okay, those are all the planets kind of sorted. Let's see what else is going on for you. So first of all, 6th house of work. Very nice. Yes. So I think, with Puer here in your 10th house of career and kind of future direction of travel, together with Laitisha in your 6th house of work and health, I do feel as though, things are definitely on the up for you now when it comes to work and career. Puer is about kind of standing up for yourself, fighting your corner, demanding what you feel you deserve when it comes to career success, fame and honors. And Laitisha here is all about celebrations and positivity when it comes to work and health. So if health hasn't been great, there's definitely an improvement happening here with Laitisha. But generally speaking, Laitisha is about expansion in the emotional body. So it's about those wonderful, happy emotions of joy, excitement, enthusiasm. So, possibly getting a new job here may make all the difference in terms of your outlook and disposition, but definitely reason to celebrate when it comes to, work and health. That's lovely. Let's see what's happening in your 3rd house. Oh, look at that. So a reiteration. I think, yes, your outlook is improving. You're feeling more positive, more optimistic about the future. And I think that's echoed generally in the astrology. If you watch that cosmic weather forecast, you'll see I talk a lot about Jupiter and how Jupiter energy is really kind of on the up now that we're moving into Sagittarius season. So I think that's going to be reflected in your outlook, and that in turn I think is going to be a good auspice. It's going to reflect in your dealings with others and in your future business arrangements. So that's very, very positive. Alright, so home and family. Right, so now we kind of get to the root of what's been aggravating you. So here I feel as though it could be a dispute about maybe the sale of a family home. Maybe you've got divorced and you've now had to divide up the assets, and this has meant arguments about who's going to be living in the property or how the house is going to be sold, and kind of assets divided up, who owns the property, how custody arrangements, all of that kind of thing. And I think it's left a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. There we will clarify with trinkets. Let's see, 5th. So 5th house, the end of a cycle, to do with family. This is children mainly, as well as things like creativity, holidays, hobbies, that kind of thing. So something is ending here. It could be a relationship that was a little bit short-lived, and that could also be why you are a little bit disappointed here with a Missio. Maybe you started a new romantic relationship and it didn't really go anywhere, and if so, just know that it's the end of a karmic contract, so it wasn't meant to last. It was just meant to teach you something, and it's best to sort of release it at this particular lunar eclipse, which is all about endings usually anyway. This for me is my full moon lunar eclipse card anyway. So finally, wonderful. So your overall energy then going into this eclipse is Puella, which is also Venus ruled, and as I said, Venus is going to be having a much better time in December, so in the 2 weeks that that follow this this full moon lunar eclipse, which will include the 2 weeks of the waning moon cycle. So I definitely think that you are going to be moving into a period of greater harmony, both within and without. You know, Pruella talking about an improvement in relations with others, more peace, more harmony, and generally feeling more settled and balanced. You know, internally in particular, because this is first house. And I think that it also points to relationships improving, you know, over the course of the next couple of months. So that's I think a very positive auspice. That's certainly what you want, is more peace and harmony, I think. You know, if others haven't been playing ball, yes, you know, you're leaving that behind now. Yes, so yeah, definitely. So I think, you know, the emphasis here being on a new cycle starting for you at that solar eclipse in December. So really using the 2 weeks of this lunar eclipse to settle any outstanding matters that might still be aggravating you, or that are left over from, you know, from June and the last couple of months with all those retrograde planets, so that you're ready to kind of press the reset button in December and have a kind of clean slate. And then Puer here talking again about new beginnings. So, you know, it could also be talking about a new career for you, a new vocation. Puer, and you know, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and Mars is all about initiating. So making the decision to move forward, fresh starts, and just stick up for yourself as well if you feel that others haven't really been playing ball. But what a wonderful outcome to your reading, Taurus. Acquisitio, which echoes this Acquisitio here, and isn't it interesting, because Mercury is going to be so prominent at this lunar eclipse. Mercury rules Gemini, of course, and you know, it's going to be making that wonderful sextile to Saturn. So I think good news coming, definitely gain. So if there has been loss, particularly when it comes to contracts and you know, committed relationships, just know that from loss comes gain. So swings and roundabouts here. Acquisitio is usually about some kind of reward from the universe. It's often financial, which is good news, given that we've got all this emphasis here on difficulties when it comes to money and possessions and resources. So yes, I think a spell of good luck coming your way, a bit of abundance to look forward to, which is fabulous. So let's finish off with a couple of trinkets. First of all, for the luminaries. Okay, so yeah, you do seem to have had a bit of a difficult time of it, Taurus. Conflict here when it comes to money and finances. But I think the good news here, of course, is that Mars has recently gone direct. So that was on the 14th of November. So it could also be pointing to a turning point at the 11/11 portal, or that new moon in Scorpio, which of course happened in your 7th house. So a kind of a reset happening in terms of relationships. And don't forget that, you know, with Venus ingressing into this part of your chart now, kind of during this particular 2-week period, that things are definitely going to improve when it comes to committed relationships and one-to-one partnerships. Right, one for the sun. Oh, we've got two. Yes, so I think, you know, this is definitely pointing to moving towards better times and away from difficult situations, possibly even abusive. Maybe you felt people took advantage of you with the whip here. So really feeling as though you got stung on some level, you know, either sexually or financially, you know, with the 8th house there. But, you know, again, reiterating the ending of your reading, which is very, very positive, Acquisitio, and also pointing to this 7th house, Acquisitio. So I think moving into a much better cycle when it comes to money and shared resources. Alright, let's have one for each of the outcome cards. So, yeah. So, I do think that for you, there is a new karmic cycle starting, and it may have something to do with a shift in your beliefs, because the cross here can be about beliefs. So that's really interesting. It can also be some kind of karmic contract, so that's something to bear in mind. But positive changes on the way with the stork here to the to Puer. So I definitely feel as though Puer here is about new starts for you, and they're positive because the stork is all about positive changes, so a shift in a positive direction. Oh, what a lovely way to end a reading. So we've got the bear here qualifying acquisitio, which really tells me that you are stepping into your power, you know, during this lunar eclipse. You're really kind of leaving behind it, selling yourself short, not standing up for yourself, letting others take advantage, or generally feeling kind of like walked or imposed upon, walked over or imposed upon. So you are, you know your worth, you're stepping into your power, you are, and it's going to pay off big time with Acquisitio here. So great reading, Taurus. I'm really pleased for you. Look out for the forecast that I'm going to do for the upcoming new moon solar eclipse, and you know, the individual eclipse horoscopes that I do for the next 6 months. But yes, I'm really pleased for you. Lovely reading, and sending lots of love, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.